So let's talk about a really weird psychological trap we all fall into, especially when it comes to money and success. We seem to be drawn to things that look complicated, and we get really, really suspicious of anything that seems, well, too easy. We're going to unpack a powerful bias that's shaping your decisions without you even realizing it. Okay, to see what I mean, check this out. Imagine two ways to invest your money. First, you've got the complex strategy. You know the one. It sounds super impressive. It's got advanced analysis, constant market monitoring, detailed forecasting, the whole shebang. Then there's the simple strategy. You just automatically invest a certain amount every month into a basic diversified fund, and then you just leave it alone. That's it. Now be honest with yourself. Which one of those feels more legitimate? Which one do you instinctively trust? For most of us, it's the complex one. Not because we have any proof it works better, but just because it looks harder. And that right there, that reveals a fascinating little glitch in how we think. At its core, it all comes down to this one simple belief. Our brains are hardwired to think that effort equals value. If a goal is important, we expect it to be difficult. And if it feels too easy, a little alarm bell of doubt starts ringing in our heads. This is the heart of the effort illusion. So where the heck does this instinct come from? And more importantly, why does it lead us down the wrong path so often? It all starts with a story we've been told our entire lives, that hard work is the only way to get real results. I mean, you hear this from the time you're a kid, right? We're taught that the harder something is, the more valuable it must be. Athletes train for years. Doctors study for a decade. The whole idea that intense effort leads to success seems totally logical. And to be fair, a lot of the time, it's true. It's not a bad rule of thumb. But here's the problem. Our brain takes that totally reasonable idea and turns it into, well, a really flawed shortcut. We stop looking at the actual outcome, the actual results, and instead we start judging the process. If it looks complicated and messy and difficult, we just assume it must be better. And you see this pop up everywhere in our daily lives. We assume expensive gadgets must have better quality. We believe that some crazy, complicated diet plan has to be more effective than just, eating healthier. And, just like we saw, we think that complex financial strategies have to be better than the simple, boring ones. Okay, so here's where it gets really fascinating. There's a deep evolutionary reason for all of this. This isn't just some modern quirk. This is an ancient piece of programming that's literally hardwired into our brains. Think about it. For almost all of human history, survival and effort were basically the same thing. Hunting took enormous energy. Farming demanded months of backbreaking work. Building a shelter was all about physical labor. There were no easy wins. So our brains evolved this incredibly useful shortcut. If it takes a ton of effort, it must be valuable for my survival. And of course, psychologists have a name for this ancient shortcut. It's called the effort heuristic. It's just a mental rule of thumb where we use the amount of effort something seems to take as a stand-in for its actual quality or value. It probably saved our ancestors a ton of time. But here is the big problem, right? In our modern world, especially with things like finance and technology, that ancient rule gets broken all the time. In fact, some of the most powerful modern systems, like automation or financial compounding, are designed specifically to remove effort. And that creates this huge conflict with our old wiring. So, when we come across a simple, genuinely effective solution, that ancient part of our brain just gets super suspicious. It starts whispering these little questions in our ear, like, wait a friend, is this too good to be true? It feels like a scam. And that little voice in your head just keeps going, right? Shouldn't I be struggling more? Shouldn't success feel harder than this? That feeling is so powerful, it actually causes us to ditch simple, proven strategies just to go find something that feels more like a struggle. And all of this leads to what I like to call the simplicity paradox. It's this completely counterintuitive idea that in modern systems like finance, adding complexity actually makes things worse, not better. And honestly, when you stop and think about it, the reason is simple. Complexity doesn't guarantee a better result. It just guarantees more chances for you to mess things up. It means more decisions, more emotional reactions, and way more opportunities to panic and do the wrong thing at the wrong time. Simplicity does the opposite. It cuts down on the number of decisions, and that often leads to much better, more consistent results. It's kind of funny. The most proven, most successful principles in finance are, well, they're incredibly simple, almost boring, really. Invest consistently, give it a long time to grow, and use low-cost, diversified funds. That's basically the whole game. There's no secret password, which is exactly why our effort-loving brains tend to look right past it. Let's look at a classic example. You've got the active investor. They're spending hours analyzing stocks, constantly tweaking their portfolio, putting in a ton of effort. Then you have the passive investor, who just follows a simple automatic system. Well, what happens over the long run? The passive investor often gets the same or even better results. Not because they're smarter, but because their system removes the temptation to make those emotional, effort-driven mistakes.
Okay, so we know this is a problem. The big question is, what do we do about it? How do we actually outsmart our own ancient brain? This is where we get practical.
The biggest change you can make is just in the question you ask yourself. You have to train your brain to stop asking, how hard does this look? And instead, start asking a much, much better question. How effective is this system? Focus on the results, not the struggle. All right, so here are 4 practical things you can start doing. 1, consciously separate effort from the outcome. Just because someone's busy doesn't mean they're being productive. 2, actively look for systems like automation that cut down on the number of decisions you have to make. 3, learn to respect consistency way more than you respect intensity. Small daily habits will almost always beat short, heroic bursts of effort. And finally, number 4, start seeing unnecessary complexity as a red flag, not a sign of genius. The takeaway here is that true genius, it often looks elegant. It looks simple. Complexity can just be a way to hide inefficiency. But a truly great system, it just works. Quietly, effectively, and without all the drama.
And that really brings us full circle, back to that strange psychological trap we talked about at the beginning. We all want success, of course, but there's a part of us that also wants the story of success, the struggle, the journey. And that desire for a good story can actually make us reject the very systems that would give us the results we want with a lot less stress. The truth is, the most powerful forces in our lives, whether we're talking about compounding interest or compounding knowledge, they often look pretty unimpressive from day to day. They're quiet, they're consistent, and they work slowly over time. Just understanding that gives you a huge advantage.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. While everyone else out there is busy chasing complexity and impressive-looking solutions, what simple, elegant system in your own life, your finances, your health, your career, could you be setting in motion right now and just letting it quietly